Go live. And I think we're there. If somebody wants to check in the group to see if the video is live, that would be awesome. And hi, what's up? And I'll press record on this. So I hope that we're live in the group. It is showing that we are. So if any of our other panelists here see this, that would be great. Hi, we are here. These are our amazing BodyMind ambassadors. Thank you, everybody. We got the thumbs up. We are live. Wow. We all wanted to come together, honestly. We have now released 3 issues of BodyMind Living. And we had this idea to just come in here and share a little bit behind the scenes of what showed up for us as we wrote these issues. If you haven't gotten your latest issue, you can go to bodymindliving.com. And this month, it's all about redefining grief. And before we dive in, I just want to say, when it comes to BodyMind Living magazine, when we came together and this idea of a magazine came to life, our intention isn't to be this like, here's how you do this, and this is what it is, and we're going to tell you 1, 2, 3, yada, yada, this is how grief is. Our intention was to pick subjects in this personal growth, self-help space and look at them ourselves and really ask ourselves, what does grief look like? What is that definition of grief for me? How has grief been part of my journey, my process? And I got to say, so this issue around redefining grief, I know is big for all of us. We really sit with this, we embody this, we feel this, we live this. It's a journey for us. And so our hope and intention is when you read the magazine, it's more about bringing questions to life and offering an invitation to start looking at these topics and how they show up for you and how they've influenced or been a part of your journey as well. So I'm curious, just for our ambassadors, our amazing ambassadors, and y'all are magical. Thank you for being in this process with me. If anybody wants to start, what kind of showed up for you as we started down this journey around grief? Because this was one that we were all excited about, but I think it was like we need to talk about this, and we knew this issue was going to come out around the holidays. It was big. So I'm just kind of curious, what showed up for you as you started to feel into your article around grief? And just unmute yourself and start talking.
I'll go first. First off, like, hats off to all writers, which I know is something we've all been saying, is that this process of being a BodyMind ambassador, which was literally an idea Laura had and said, hey, do you want to try this thing? We were all like, I guess so. Yeah. So it's like, just my hat goes off to writers, because it's been a kind of painful process, I think, for all of us at some points. It hasn't been easy. And this particular issue with grief, what we ended up publishing was very different from a lot of the other stuff that I wrote. And what I found was that I needed to write a lot about grief for myself and not necessarily be published out into the world. So this is this journey of like, well, redefining it. What does that actually mean? And having to dig deep. And there's just so many layers that this is just one little piece of it. It's not like the be all end all of what I think grief is. And I think everybody can relate to that. So it's been this whole BodyMind Living process of redefining. It's been hard. Like, it's been a challenge for me, at least, and a gift of like giving myself that space and grace to just write about it and explore and really dig deep in what does that mean to me.
It's almost been like exercising, like it hurts so bad, but when you're done, you're like, oh, it felt good. And you get better and you get stronger. I feel like I'm such a better writer from where I started just even 6 months ago. like it, you know, what would take me like an hour or 2 or 3 or 5, you know, is now 45 minutes or an hour and a half. And it feels really good to flex that muscle that, it's painfully good. Yeah.
That stamina thing is no freaking joke. Like that exercise metaphor is so perfect. And I think the redefining piece is consciousness, right? And I think where I had to begin with all of these topics is, well, if we're redefining it, how do I define it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Which was like, oh shit, I thought I had this figured out, right? Like that's the status quo version. That's what everybody does. But this redefining crap, holy mackerel, I was like, it was another level of consciousness. It was another level of, oh, this is what this means. And I think we all have felt this pressure of like, it has to be so profound and we have to deliver the pinpoint version. And there's been a lot of freedom in like, this is just one story. Just tell this story. And I just, full disclosure, feel so intimidated sometimes when I read all of yours. I'm like, oh shit, they said it way better than I did. Like, how did I miss that? And so it's been this like, evolution of self-compassion as a writer, but also as like, I feel so honored to be in your company. Like, I feel so, I feel pretty ballsy.
Yeah. And I think for yay internet, there's a little lag there, but I'm kind of curious. So Heidi, you brought something up. So right, we are doing these issues to redefine these things. Like there's so many words and phrases, you know, self-care was one. It's like self-care. Like what actually is this? You know, so coming into this issue, what was maybe the definition of grief before you started writing, and what kind of showed up for you as in the process as you were writing?
And you know, for me, hopefully I'm coming through okay.
You have a little bit of an echo, so and we can hear you, so
okay,
just go for
great.
it. We'll make it work.
Well, I'm glad you can hear me.
Yeah.
For me, learning, I thought I knew what grief was, and like in my head, like you think you know what something is and it lives in your head, but you don't quite know what it actually is until it's out on paper in front of you and being reflected back to you. And then you almost get to question that and saying, is that even true? And so it's this constant process of redefining grief, you know, and then almost at this place of, you can't even really define it because it's something that continues to evolve. It's undefinable in a way, was what I was finding. And you just had to kind of choose an element of it and an experience of it, of what it was going to mean. But yeah, so for me, what I initially, when I think of what grief was, it's like this mourning, this loss of something that you feel but don't quite always have words to. Then as diving into what grief is, it's also been this rebirth. And so it's like a journey of grief. And then I thought what grief was, I was mentioning before, is like this loss of something, this hope that I thought something could be, but no longer is. And that pain of grief. But then realizing there's other ways to grieve that could be nurturing and loving and caring. And then for me, in my article, I ended up just writing a poem about where grief is and how it lives in my body, because there was no definition for it, but this is just what grief wants to say to me, and go from there. But it was, how can you define it? You get to just refine what it means when it shows up.
Yeah. And I saw Melissa Kelly, I saw you were going to say something as well too. So if you wanted to pop in.
Just to really echo everything else that's already been said here in so many ways, just the, you know, wow, even bringing consciousness to that moment of like, wait a minute, how do I define grief? What does that mean to me? And noticing how like conceptual that is on the surface, and sitting with that. And then also for me, this was definitely up to this point, the most challenging article for me to write. Like kept missing deadlines, consciously, unconsciously. And I just found it took a continual showing up to the process, and then just as Fidel said, and allowing, like, how does it want to be voiced through me? And I think allowing myself into sharing through the lens of my experience, because there was definitely a recognition of, like, grief is, I think, a deeply personal process for each of us, and our relationship with that. And it, I was not prepared for the sort of reflective journey over my shoulder of all of the different moments and ways that grief has been present. And it is not like what I came to by the close of my article was, wow, there are just so many different, I guess maybe for lack of better words, types of grief, and how each one of those moments where grief was present was an opportunity for some deeper healing. And it was very profound. I felt on the other side of it, how it shifted from very much a conceptual, how do I write about grief? And basically I had to be with grief to get to an ability to share something valuable about it, I think. And yeah, I didn't really want to do that, which was like, even owning and admitting to, oh, wow, to write this, we have to go here. We have to go here. We have to feel it.
And that's been, I feel like you just expressed what I hope the reader experiences of coming into it with, like, here's what I think it is, and I'm going to let myself be with it to deepen it. And I've shared with you all that this journey of these articles has been one of the highlights of my year, because how many of us consciously say, I'm going to sit and be with my grief and see what it reveals to me today? Mm-hmm. Like, hot damn. For me, it was definitely healing. And the more I sat with it, it brought, like, it created this sense of an opening to me. Like, I saw all these, for me, the image that came through was just this shattering. Like, I saw that from our very first time we talked about this issue. And there's a beautiful image, if you guys haven't seen it, of the statue that shattered. Carly, I think you shared that. We actually went to the artist and she let us use that image in the magazine. So we got approval from her. And it's matched with a beautiful poem about how grief is about letting the light in. And oh man, I felt like through the process of writing this, because grief has been something that has been very big in my journey. I felt like I got to this place of, like, grief is like this opening for a really deep joy and love that I had never, like, experienced in the process. So it was, and again, Melissa, as you shared that, I hope, as those of you who have been reading and being a part of the issue, like, that is what I hope you start to take out of this, of just a willingness to explore and be curious to these topics in your life. Michelle,
I love how you said you get to, in this process, see what it reveals, and that's what coaching is about too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you had no idea what it was going to bust open in your soul and who you were going to become, or what you wanted, or what you were thinking. And so it's just such a beautiful gift. And then I love how Fidel said, grief can be loving and caring and beautiful and warm. And this, as painful, because we, like Melissa said, we had to sit with our grief in this, painful process. I think I love this one the most. And I've thought about the revelation I had while writing this article, I swear, almost every day since. And my revelation was this loving, caring part of grief, and that we needed to do it as a family, and we didn't know how. And as a kid, I shared in my article, you know, when somebody would die or get sick or anything, we would like throw down, we would pray the rosary, you know, and it was like this, you know, it was very funny, not funny, but to think about me like in with my family, like really praying this like kind of old, you know, and I don't know how to do that with my kids. I don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to say we're scared together. But as we prayed the rosary with my family, it said, I acknowledge your pain. I see you. This is a normal thing you're feeling, even though we didn't say those words, you know, and we said, this isn't in our control, but we're going to put like all our thoughts, all our energy on this one thing right now. And I just realized like what a gift that was and what a beautiful process that is. And we had something horrible happen in our family that I know many people have this year. And I realized like my spouse and I and my kid, like we didn't even know how to come together and grieve or process. And so we went to our separate places. So I was like really, I'm really excited for ideas on how we can grieve together, how we can, you know, replace that rosary and what we did as a family there. So anyway, I just loved this in that it was painful and eye-opening and raw and real. So I love about coaching in life.
There's like so many layers to this. And one thing that I heard in this, like that collective grief, but also I feel like what's happening in the world right now is like everybody is individually trying to keep it together.
Yeah.
And how the grieving was actually like this place, like has the potential to be a place of connection and surrender and intimacy. And, you know, as we come to the close of 2020, you know, to just say, oh, let's step into 2021 and move on. Like,
yeah,
what if we did collectively come together and let the grief in, because how healing that would be.
So on point too. I love what you're saying about community and connection, because when we don't grieve, we continue to carry along with us, you know. And you even think about this year, like not having that space to grieve, whatever that is, you know, it's going to roll into and show up in other different ways and carry other different weights and feel like we have to carry it on ourselves. And I think like what you were speaking to here, Laura Michelle, the power of the collective. And even in writing this magazine as readers, it's like sometimes we're so busy, we don't have time to grieve. Or like, how do you talk about in your article so well? I mean, it was about how you have to just get over it now. Like you got your window to grieve, and now the world is expecting you to bounce back. And because you've got to function, you've got to live life. And it was so cool. I'm noticing even reading your articles and as a collective reading, you know, the magazine, it's allowing that pause to actually slow down, to give us an opportunity, just like as we the writers do, the same thing as we the readers do as well. And so we get to come together in that way and connect and get that permission. But yeah, there's something there with that pause and grieve together. And just how when we grieve together, we come together. And I think the quote, or I don't know who said it, but hurting people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you know, when we're in that pain and we don't know how to express it properly, and you know, we run and try to go through that pain by ourselves. But if we can all grieve together, like how much we can come together as people and as a nation and as a world. Because you get that, oh, I had no idea it was that way. And then it's like, me too. Man, I know what that feels like to grieve and have that pain. And you put it in words for something that I couldn't quite feel on my own.
I love that, Fidel. And one thing that I uncovered in this process too is like the grief that I grew up with is so much of the reason of why I'm a coach today. And I never put that together until taking that time to like write about it and be with it. Even though my article is not about that, right? This was the part that maybe it'll be something else someday, but it was so like healing in understanding of, well, right. Everybody talks about, why do you do what you do? It was such a deepening of that process of, oh, this is why. It's because I grew up with so much of that in my life and I wanted to understand it and figure it out and figure out how to be with it and move through it, which is so much of what I feel coaching is, right? And an ability to listen, body mind coaching, listen to our bodies and be with it. So it's such a powerful process. And one more piece that came up here that I think is so revealing about this process, and I hope it's helpful for the readers and the people listening, is that as the contributors to Body Mind Living, we don't have the answers. This isn't like this is how you grieve, this is how you redefine it. Like, this is so not what that is. And I think it's powerful to mention, because in Body Mind coaching, as a coach as well, it's not what it's about either. It's not about having the answers, just about an ability to be with people. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, and it's being like a professional question asker, right? Where like that's what coaching is on many levels. But I think with grief in particular, for me, it's almost like you could always interact with it out of the peripheral vision, where it's like, it's here. And now I have to look at it. Come on, man. What are we doing? Are you sure? Like, Laura, I thought this was something else. And now we're doing all this stuff. But it's kind of like having a tantruming kid. Like, yeah, I'll get there. You're doing the thing that's super important, and you can pay attention to them out of the periphery. But when you go to them, and grief becomes an invitation for compassion, and grief, but there, at least for me, grief, sometimes it feels like it's so overwhelming. Like, am I going to live through it? Like, when it overtakes you, like, oh shit. And then you realize you're still here. And then it's that considering the question, like, oh, I'm going to get emotional. Dang it. Like, now what? I think that is like the title of the magazine is like, now what? Like, now that you've considered all this. Yeah. And I love this relationship with the topic, the imagery that I got for our next article, because I'm freaking wrestling with that one right now. Like, I feel like it has me pinned to the mat. I'm like, God bless, I thought I had this figured out. But the imagery that I'm getting is sitting at my round kitchen table with these topics like, hey, y'all, what do you want me to know?
Yeah.
Like, and that's, I just so wish we could all be in like together at a round table, like all of us. I know we can do it like this.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I'm impatient.
And you bring up, I love this, this idea of, because words, Carly, when you said that, when we had these conversations, when we were writing this, it was like, yeah, I came into coaching because of my grief as well. It was something that definitely led me to this. And I think what makes the body mind process different is the embodiment piece. And so when we write these articles, we're not just like, oh, let's think about it. Like, we're like, what would it look like to embody this? So I'm kind of curious, what did your embodiment process look like in this experience, especially around grief?
For me, it was messy. Were you asking someone specifically here, Laura?
No, Fidel, was this your video? I saw a yoga flow that you did where you were writing and moving. I just want to know, like, what did you do to embody this as you were writing this? Like, what showed up in that process?
I had to invite myself to surrender, to experience and to feel all of the grief, and it was messy. So like, even with trying to write the article, I'm uncomfortable. There's tension in my body. I'm like, I'm not quite sure what to say. And, what I'm writing doesn't quite seem to be the thing to define what grief is for me. And I literally just had to just leave, get into my body. Which I know for me, movement is something that does that for me. And so there's an article that I wrote that I thought was going to be the article. And then I went out somewhere and to do some yoga. And next thing you know, like, everything wasn't going as expected. I'm there, I'm setting up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And then it started to rain. And as I'm just there and allow myself to feel all my grief and channel, I started to think about all the times and all the pains and all the things I thought that I was going to be a particular way, the loss that I had in my life. I really just started to think about all these different experiences. And just felt it in my body. And I just showed up to my yoga mat and said, let me just talk about grief as I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and experience everything happening around me. And it started to rain, like all these different things. And like, it was messy. And I just said, this is what grief is. And so it was like this visual movement and representation for me, to feel into my grief. And then I came back and I was like, oh, I know what I want to write about now. Like, I know what the thing is. But I had to feel it first and kind of go through it, and to come out on the other side and kind of feel like, wow, I feel so much better now after I felt what I was feeling. Now I have a better viewpoint and perspective of what it is. And it helped me to kind of just then write and kind of put it down on paper a little bit.
Yeah. I can share my embodiment process, because I love I love movement and I love to dance. And so as I was doing this, I actually went and picked songs from those moments of my life. Like, how many of y'all have the breakup song from college? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, like I went and pulled that bad boy out. You know? I think it was there like some Natalie Imbruglia, like, you know. But I went and picked those songs and like turned them on and just started dancing. And it was such a way for me to like bring back the energy of it, and just it brought it back. And I felt like that's how I could bring the energy back of grief back into my body. Oh man, and I love a good cry. So, you know, I cried, I moved, I danced. And yeah, Fidel, I think there was this moment of just like really, really deep surrender. And the other thing that happened, and you know, for me personally, you know, grief has been around a lot of loss of my best friends that went missing in the Bahamas. My first boyfriend passed away a couple of years ago, and that one hit me really hard. And it was like, as I felt this energy, and my grandma and all, Heidi, I know you and I have that very much in common. I felt like as I moved with the grief, I felt like they were present, and it was just, it was just so magical for me. So that was my embodiment of this. And that was just really sitting with this, like asking the energy, like Fidel said, asking that energy once I felt that and I felt connected to it, like, what does this energy want to say? And it kept coming back to like, don't resist me, don't fight me. I'm here to let the love in, not take it away, you know, and that's what came up for me.
That was so exquisite what you just said. Like, I'm here to let the love in, not take. I'm like, preach, sister, do it.
That was the grief. That wasn't me. I just get to be the conduit.
Yeah, but thank God for your conduit. And also thank God we all have body-mind embodiment experience, because I think this shit would have killed us. Like, I think we would have been ill-prepared to explore without having, am I freezing? Sorry. Without having that embodiment foundation. Yeah. And for me, like when you're talking about music, I go to movies like Steel Magnolias and Beaches. And like, if I need a good cry, like hit me with some freaking old school Dolly Parton and anything, by the way. But there is this essence then of like, because grief is so associated with death, and when we are still alive after the grief, but we have to acknowledge that there is a death, but within that death is birth. And that's one of the reasons I did the paradox of my articles. I had to go back into childbirth again. Like, oh God, there's so much about death and birth that are so synonymous. And just a reminder that we're all miracles, right? Like, holy crap, it's so much bigger. But grief is one lens we get to look at our magic through also, you know? I could talk all day. I'm going to mute.
I love picturing everyone having their own process. Like now I'm picturing Fidel and his process and yoga and movement and, you know, Laura and her Spotify playlist, you know, and Heidi and, you know, Steel Magnolias. And I'm like, I love this question because I didn't realize I had a process, but I do. And now I'm realizing it's tapping into my subconscious, because that's where I cram that grief, right? In a place that I don't even know exists, and that's impacting me. And so what I do is I stop trying and I start listening, and I listen through my hands and I just let it flow. And then I go, oh, hot damn, like, look at that. You know, like, is that me? Did I write that? Was that something I thought? Like, I had no idea I thought that. Ooh, cool. You know, and it's like, it's really neat. And I didn't know I had that process. So that's like really exciting to me to realize, like, you know, I just like, let it go, let it flow. And yeah, fun.
I love that,
Having a
Michelle.
two-step
It's like you remove the
process.
filter.
Go ahead.
What's that?
What did he say?
No, I was just saying, I love that, Michelle. It's like you just remove the filter of your mind.
Yeah.
And then you just like show up to it, and that curiosity, and then it's saying, okay, if nothing's right or wrong, let's just put it down, and then it's being reflected back to you, and it's like, hello. Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that.
My systems brain just like freaked out with this two-step process of stop trying and start listening. I feel like you have just saved me 7,000 hours of torture over the next couple of articles. So thank you for that gift.
Can we hear from our thread weaver? Because I know this is
there's so much here, but as everyone is sharing, like one of the things that I've learned about my process and showing up to get words on the page is it's important for me to build in time on the front end of this to do to like shift from head. It just starts in the head. And there's this wrestling. Now, granted, like there's so much less wrestling now that I'm allowing space for the wrestling. Cool. Like this is what we're doing. And it's very much in the headspace right now. And, you know, I think I was embodiment, when you asked the question about embodiment, I was like, oh, wow, there's so many different elements to that for me. But there's also been such a freedom, not only in this article, but in this process of showing up to these articles, of recognizing I had this belief coming into this experience that there was going to be some magical formula that I was going to discover that was going to allow this to be light and lovely and easy. And oh, wow, I feel myself softening even saying this out loud. What I've realized is it's just really permission to be in the process, permission to truly let it be messy. And that, I mean, I laugh at myself because there's just this idea that writers, you know, sit down and they just create these eloquent, you know, beautiful things for our consumption. And there's like no pain in that. And so in all of this, it's been, you know, for me, that wrestling in the beginning always shows up as just nuggets. And I'm like, everybody else writes in straight lines and it's so pretty and concise. And just no, I'm learning to love that about my process. It's a nugget here and a nugget there. And sometimes it's recognizing when it's time to set it all down and go move. Go take a walk, go actually like cook dinner, like engage my body in some other aspect of being and living. And oh my God, there's so much clicks in stepping away from, you know, the commitment to I'm going to stare at the screen, I'm going to stare at the paper, whatever. And I'll share with all of you that Laura, you were talking about your playlist. Oh my gosh. I have this thing, I don't know what it's about. You know, we all have our phones and our Alexas and we can do all this cool stuff with digital music. I still have like my iPod from, I don't know, early 2000s. And there is like a set of music on there that is so vast, you know, the range from this artist to that artist. And that is definitely, I think, something I will go to when I'm looking to embody a certain timeline in my life. Because that is like decades. That's like my lifetime on, you know, up until a certain point. And so there was a lot of that too, like go to the kitchen and move my body and make food and dance and sing. And oh my gosh, Eureka. Like there is this, I don't know, maybe 2-sentence thing that feels like I just got it all and I run in and I write that down. And so much of compiling this work, these articles, each one has happened that way. So letting it flow as it comes, and also releasing my attachment to needing it to look or be a certain way. Like, so there's just this really deep commitment to just keep showing up to it, keep showing up to it. And then systems and structurally being mindful of, yes, there are deadlines. We need to plan this out so these threads can be a woven piece of something for readers to consume by a certain date. So that's been cool too, because otherwise I would probably just be gathering threads inevitably for, you know, for long periods of time. So
I love that. Carly, did you want to share anything?
I think the only thing that I'm gathering is like when you're embodied and you're writing, for me, some of it is just, and I talk about this a lot, right? Like being in the process of like, I'm going to stick with this long enough to like get something out. So for me, it's kind of like engaging and wrestling a little bit and like continuing and writing it down. And I don't know where this is going. And Melissa, right? Like there are lots of threads, and then it's the step away. Then it's the walk or the embodiment. For me, it's usually a walk, and then coming back and being able to like, oh, this piece actually goes up here. This piece can go down here. And then our beautiful designer, Sandy, right? Sometimes she's incredible, Sandy Bassett. Sometimes she'll like send me a little quote. I'm like, what's that from? She's like, you wrote that. I'm like, I did? Like, I think it's when it's embodied, like Michelle was saying, sometimes these things just come out of you and you don't even realize it, but it's getting to that subconscious, which is just super interesting to learn.
You brought up something, well, two things. One, I think what I've loved about this process, especially with this group, is that we have these ideas and we come into community. So there have been times I'm like, this is coming up, I have no idea what this means. And like yesterday on our call about our next article, that totally happened. To have somebody reflect back was really powerful. But before we go any further, I think we absolutely need to talk about the visual experience of this magazine. Because you're right, and Sandy Bassett is our creative director when it comes to the magazine. And y'all, if you haven't gotten your issue, go get it, because just looking at the pages, you will have an experience. Like, even if you read the words or not, it is freaking gorgeous. So, you know, all of us are coaches, all of us have this fun embodiment. So what has been this experience to do the embodiment, collect the threads, write the piece, and then see it?
It blows my mind, like what Sandy can do. And she doesn't just take pictures, she's like sitting with it too, and she's embodying and reading all our stories.
Yes. That's why she designs our sites, is because I'm like, she understands embodiment, and it's not just tell me what you want this to look like. It's like she gets it. Sorry to cut you off, but yes, I'm very excited for that.
I'm always so excited when that draft comes back to us for first review, because I'm like, it's art, and there is something that I have yet to be able to put words to, but it is a true excitement, a joy to know that when I click that and get to, I mean, we're going to get to see the visual imagery that she's inspired to match with our words. And I just feel so incredibly grateful. And, you know, that's another really beautiful part of this journey, and an aligned piece that, you know, we have somebody that is so embodied and also connected to the heart of our work, and is able to, you know, bring that extra step necessary to release this out, you know, for consumption. And I just, Sandy is so gifted, and I'm so excited and grateful that she's a part of this journey with all of us.
Yeah. Well, and I think that consumption piece matters too, of like, of all the crap that's out there right now that I can't control, and that's just, it's junk, right? To be a part of something that is so intentional with people that I like so admire. And when we got that first issue, I was like, holy shit, look what we did. Like, if that is just one idea floating around in Laura's head, and like we all get to like see what the hell's going on, and then we get to contribute, and especially this year to contribute to something that has provided so much healing for us as individuals. And then you think about the ripple effect of that and the ripple effect of that. I mean, we don't have a whole hell of a lot of control, but we do at the same time, and contributing is amazing.
And I'm going to do just a quick plug here while I can. Number 1, go get your issue. Number 2, please share it. And number 3, I just want to share because just what Heidi said, I have crazy ideas and then I say, how can I take this crazy idea and make it real? This is everything we teach in BodyMind coaching. And I have a vision of BodyMind living being on the end caps at Whole Foods. So I'm just going to say that out into the world, out into a community, anybody who happens to watch this video, just collectively hold that vision with me. That would be amazing because we are going to make it real. Michelle, I feel like you were going to share something there before.
No, I'm good. I'm so grateful to have, I keep going back now to the exercise analogy. Like, I'm so grateful to have had a personal trainer along this journey and to grow exponentially in this way. It's just, what a gift. Very, very cool to have those deadlines, and your stuff can come out into the world and people can see it. And it's just wonderful to share and be in community, especially now. Yeah.
Having it being seen out in the world, just that process, like we talked about, being messy and kind of painful. And like I've noticed, you write something down and there's like this place where you almost hold your breath because you want to know that it's okay. And it's like, and you want the article to matter. You hope, you cross your fingers that you said what you really wanted to say. And then you put it out there, and there's like this place you just want to know it's okay, and then it comes back and you see the imagery, and this thing that you hope come to life, and the pictures and the embodiment and the article and just the way it comes together. And then you get to see where something that started very in that pain and the confusion, and the hours spent in intentionality, and it gets reflected back to you, and it almost like this masterpiece image of like, just all come, you see it and you're just like, wow. You almost see that full process of that thing that was messy and painful and uncertain comes back, and you're like, that's what it is. So there's always this joy when you see, the article and the work and the magazine and everything comes back, and how everybody's piece comes together. And you just kind of get to receive it in a way. And it's like this, hey, what you felt, what you did, showing up, feeling what you're feeling was okay. And it was worth it. And let's do it again.
And every time, like there's such a vulnerability to this. And for those of you listening, please know, like every single month we sit down, we talk about our issue and what's coming up for us. And we always keep coming back to, a lot of times we're not writing to get to a destination where we give an answer. A lot of times we're simply writing and getting curious and getting to a question that we ask ourselves. And I know I felt this. How many of you have written your article and then we submit it, the issue comes out and you're like, but now I want to say this. Like,
every time,
every single time we're like, oh, but I could have said this and there's this. And, and this is the journey. And so, to me, this magazine is just, it's a place to get curious. It's a place to feel, to just embody, have an experience, and maybe start asking some questions for yourself and in your life. I want to be mindful of our time. Did I see?
Can I make a really quick request to anybody listening?
Please.
I just, when somebody emails me and says that they have read my article and it resonated or it impact, like that makes my entire year. So if any of our articles, resonated with you, please don't hesitate to drop us an email or tag us in this community, because we pour our heart into it. And the fact that it resonates with even one person is magic.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And drop the comment, let us know, please share. And we want to hear what you got out of it and what showed up for you and what stories, questions, experiences maybe came forth. I have one final question that I want to play with. I'm curious, was there anything in your article that came up that didn't make it in the magazine with this, like, oh, the thing that I wanted to write after I wrote? Is there anything that just you want to honor that came up from this experience of writing the grief article? Oh, you're muted, Fidel.
It's just been really short. Because even as you said, it came up and it was the first thing that came up. Thinking about grief as something when you lose something, but sometimes you lose something that's still there. I had a friend that was no longer friends, uncertain why we were friends. And I remember having to actually like mourn a relationship that no longer is what it was. And to be able to mourn it and learn to be okay with it. But then also to realize that you never lose something, like it's always with you. And there's this place of being able to honor, like grief is like this place of honoring the experience and what you had, or for however long something's in your life. But I remember like having to choose to mourn something that no longer was, and the freedom that came from it. But knowing that it's part of me and it makes me who I am. But that was one thing that didn't get to write down and kind of really speak into, but it was a messy tears, just forcing myself just to feel the pain of it and the loss of it, because that's what it was.
One thing that came up for me was that I didn't get to write about was grief with like the loss of my own identity, of who I thought I was supposed to be, what my life was supposed to look like, and then what it was. That was something that it was a thread that popped up that didn't make it in, but I also thought it was just something that was really powerful to feel into.
I remember having that conversation in one of our co-writing, and I have a version of that for mine as well. Like the grief of what could have been, the grief of what I thought was going to be, or the grief of my timelines. Like I've got really ridiculous timelines.
This says the systems person. Yes.
100%. I think that's the other piece of this writing is like, I'm not writing this for a class.
Yeah.
Like, oh shoot, am I freezing? Sorry. It's kind of like when I was in college, you got to bang it out and get it done. And this has not been that. This has been about consideration. And there's actually grieving in the writing process. There's a grief of, Melissa was talking about, kill your darlings. Was that Liz Gilbert or whatever? Like grieving some of those sentences that I was like, oh, I sound so smart. Or grieving the sentence where you're like, oh shit, that would have been awesome. There's been grief in this whole process. Really, truly. Exquisite grief.
Oh, exquisite grief. Gosh, now I want you to write a whole article on that.
There's a Spotify playlist coming out soon. I've decided I'm going to make it and reach out to all of you for all your grief songs and put it together and post it in the group.
Oh God, that would be so good.
Yes. And, as we these last 2 weeks, Fidel pointed out that, what we don't grieve, we carry with us. So I don't know, collectively guys, let's just listen to the playlist, do the dancing, do all the things, let it come out. And so
I love that.
Watch for that.
I love that, Michelle, especially going into the holidays. And I know this article came out intentionally during this time of year. And so just to be with it and reach out to anyone you need to reach out to and be with it and grieve, whatever you need to do in this moment. And I love that, Michelle, because it's like a way to collectively be with each other when we can't be with each other, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm going to go have a moment when we close down the Zoom, because I'm just so proud of what we've done this year and so inspired. And so thank you for trusting when I was like, hey, so I have this idea. And you said, yes, you came in and all of you have continued to share your hearts. And we say all the time, feel your way forward, let it be messy. This has been such an experience of that, and so beautiful. And I feel like just just creating this and having these conversations, putting these articles together, having such a beautiful product that just is like, oh, like just feel the essence of it from opening it. Thank you for all being in this. Thank you for saying yes and sharing and being a part of the process. So again, go get your free issue, bodymindliving.com. Please share it. Please let us know. We have the Body Mind Living community in Facebook. Let us know what has shown up for you, what questions you're asking, what experiences have shown up. I love the playlist. So yeah, we'll make that happen. And also in January, we're going to be releasing our issue on redefining freedom. Just wait. That was a big one. That one, I think that made me cry. So they just keep getting better. So thank you, everybody. Bye.